Do you believe the Attorney General lied to you?
Well, I certainly believe that he either misrepresented the facts or he's sufficiently incompetent that he didn't know what was in his weekly briefings. And I certainly support the fact that the Attorney General cannot investigate himself.
So, CNN has obtained some of the documents that you and your colleagues have referenced, and the Attorney General did receive some memos last year acknowledging the existence of Operation Fast and Furious, but only in passing. The Justice Department is saying basically, look, he receives dozens of reports every week, some more than 100 pages. There's no indication he knew of the problems with this particular operation that far back. Do you believe that?
Well, it's difficult, if at all possible, to believe it. Additionally, there's a spin going that when they talked about guns walking in excess, that this were other programs. We've had testimony in front of our committee that says justice never lets guns walk. And now we have written proof that they were concerned about the guns walking. They were concerned about the optics of press interviews in which they were going to talk about problems, including Brian Terry's murder. And very clearly, this was not hundreds of pages of reports. This was the key weekly briefing that the Attorney General received, on which there was a paragraph on Fast and Furious repeatedly. So to say, when asked specifically about Fast and Furious, he didn't understand the question. He certainly had to know that every week he was seeing briefings on Fast and Furious. He had to at least say, I'm familiar with the name. What is it you mean? Or that I don't fully understand everything as well as I did 2 weeks before. Instead, in fairness, both to myself and to Jason Chaffetz, the Attorney General implied that he had never heard of this until 2 weeks before, rather than that perhaps he didn't know what a felony stupid program this was that led to the death of Brian Terry and the release of at least 2,000 weapons into the worst of the worst people's hands.
I'd always thought this was the first time this kind of a program had been tried. There are new revelations tonight coming out that the Bush administration had a similar weapons program, something called Operation Wide Receiver. Do you know about that? Do you think officials from that administration should be looked at as well?
Well, Anderson, we'd know a lot more about it, except that's among the documents we're still waiting to get. What we do know about Wide Receiver somewhat is very small amount of weapons, much more intensive following. But in fact, we will get to the bottom of whether or not this practice in a smaller way may have begun on the Bush watch. We're not putting it past any administration and giving anyone a pass. The American people and the people of Mexico expect us to have a zero tolerance for letting drugs come into our country or weapons go into Mexico.